Okay, so your Nissan's check engine light is glaring at you from the dashboard. Don't sweat it. You're in exactly the right place. We're about to take that frustrating little light, figure out exactly what it means, and turn it into a clear, simple action plan.
So you plugged in your scanner, and the code P0158 popped up? I know, it looks like just a random bunch of letters and numbers, but it's not. It's a very specific signal pointing to a very specific problem. And guess what? We're going to decode it together.
Here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll nail down what this code actually is. Then we'll get into what your car is trying to tell you. We'll line up the 4 main suspects that could be causing this, find the right fix for each one, and then wrap it all up with a handy diagnostic checklist you can actually use.
All right, first things first. What in the world is your car actually trying to tell you with this P0158 code? Let's break it down and decode that warning light.
In plain English, P0158 points right to your heated oxygen sensor. Specifically, it's sensor 2 on bank 2. Now, bank 2 just means one side of your V-shaped engine, and sensor 2 is the one located after the catalytic converter. Its whole job is to sniff the exhaust, and this code means it's yelling to the car's computer that the voltage in its circuit is just too hot.
So, to really crack this case, we've got to get inside the mind of your car's computer, the Engine Control Module, or ECM. Let's figure out what it's seeing that it doesn't like.
The ECM is basically looking for one of 2 things to go wrong. It'll throw this P0158 code if the sensor is sending a voltage signal that's just stuck way too high, or if that signal isn't dropping down to a minimum level when it's supposed to. If either one of those things happens, the computer knows something's up and it flags the code.
Okay, so if that wacky sensor signal is the symptom, what's the actual disease? Well, it's time to line up the usual suspects. There are 4 main culprits we really need to investigate here. And here they are, our 4 main suspects, all laid out. We're looking at the wiring, which is the harness and connectors, the sensor itself, the fuel pressure, and the fuel injectors. Any one of these could be our problem, and for each one, there's a specific fix. Let's start with suspect number 1, the wiring. You know, sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. This could be nothing more than a frayed wire or a loose plug. If that electrical signal can't get through cleanly, the ECM gets a bad reading. It's kind of like having a terrible cell connection. The message just gets all garbled. Next on the list, suspect number 2 is the oxygen sensor itself. I mean, parts wear out, right? It's just a fact of life. And when this sensor decides it's had enough, it can get stuck sending a high voltage signal, basically crying wolf even if everything else in your exhaust is perfectly fine. Moving on, let's talk about the fuel system. If your fuel pressure is out of whack, either too high or too low, it messes up the whole engine's air-to-fuel recipe. If the engine starts running rich, which is just a fancy way of saying it's getting too much fuel, the oxygen sensor will detect it, send that high voltage signal, and trigger our P0158 code. And our final suspect, also hanging out in the fuel system, is the injectors. If one of these injectors goes rogue and starts spraying in too much fuel, it creates that exact same rich condition. The oxygen sensor does its job, it sounds the alarm, and boom, code P0158 appears on your scanner. Okay, we've rounded up the suspects. Now for the good part, moving from diagnosis to the actual solution. Because once you've nailed down the cause, the fix is usually pretty straightforward. The solutions line up perfectly with our causes, 1-to-1. Bad harness, you repair or replace it. Faulty sensor, you swap it out for a new one. Fuel pressure is off, you check and adjust it. And if an injector is the problem, you replace the bad one. Simple as that. Now for what I think is the most important part. Knowing the potential causes is one thing, but how do you test for them in the right order? Here is your step-by-step actionable plan to diagnose the problem efficiently. You always want to start with the simplest and cheapest check first. So begin with a visual inspection of the wiring and connectors. Look for anything obviously burnt, frayed, or loose. If that all looks good, then you can move on to testing the oxygen sensor itself. Still no smoking gun? Okay, now you investigate the fuel system, first by checking the overall pressure, and finally by examining the individual injectors. And this really hits the nail on the head. A check engine light isn't a single problem. It's a clue. It's the start of a little mystery. To solve it, you have to be methodical and consider all the possibilities. That's the difference between a quick fix and a frustrating wild goose chase. So with this clear plan in hand, that P0158 code is no longer a mystery. It's a solvable problem. The only question left is, are you ready to pop the hood and find the culprit?